Welcome back. This episode gets weird in the best way.
We are talking sperm, pelvic floors, porn, and all the myths people whisper about.
And somehow it all circles back to health, which is the annoying part.
The body refuses to let us keep sex in one little box.
The sperm count thing honestly hit me hardest because that decline is not small.
50% over 50 years is not a cute statistic at all.
People hear fertility and think one couple issue, but it sounds way more environmental.
Yeah, and then you add diet, stress, disease, and just modern life being chaotic.
But the scary part is everyone acts like this is some personal failure.
Right. As if your swimming cell is supposed to win against a sauna and a laptop.
That is such a disgusting but accurate sentence.
The phone thing is wild, though, because it is not magic, it is heat.
Which is somehow less dramatic and more annoying because it means habits matter.
Exactly. Put the laptop on your lap all day and then act confused later.
Humans love convenience until biology asks for a tiny bit of respect.
And the sauna crowd is going to hate hearing that warmth is not always wellness.
The sauna guys are going to start carrying fertility pamphlets now.
What I liked is she did not turn it into panic, just awareness and prevention.
Yeah, because the minute people hear sperm decline, they start planning the end of civilization.
Human beings do love a species-ending headline over breakfast.
The semen volume thing was also way more mechanical than people imagine.
Delay ejaculation, hydrate, and sometimes it is just weaker force with age.
So the body is basically saying, less fireworks, same event.
That is brutal, but yes, that is exactly the vibe.
And then Kegels come in, which everyone treats like the answer to everything.
People hear pelvic floor and suddenly think it is a miracle hack.
But if you are tensing without relaxing, you can actually make things worse.
That part matters because the internet sells strengthening like it is always good.
The orgasm piece was fascinating too, because that is basically involuntary exercise.
Your pelvic floor is getting a workout whether you showed up or not.
Nature is so efficient it almost feels rude.
And if regular orgasm improves pelvic floor strength, that is not exactly trivia.
It makes you realize so many people are ashamed of something their body is literally designed to do.
Shame shows up everywhere in this conversation, and usually for no useful reason.
Porn is the biggest example because people act like the existence of desire is a moral collapse.
I think the adult version is way less interesting than the kid exposure problem.
Exactly, because children are seeing it way too early and their brains do not have context.
And unlike the old days, you are not hunting for a magazine like some tiny criminal.
You just stumble into it now, which is the whole problem.
For adults, the shame loop is what worries me more than the porn itself.
Because then it becomes a dopamine fix for feeling bad, not even for sex.
Which is a very expensive way to make yourself feel worse for 10 minutes.
That is the most honest description of compulsive behavior I have heard.
The headset conversation is where it gets genuinely unsettling, though.
You mean the idea that better and better virtual intimacy could replace real relationships?
Yes, because once the tech gets good enough, laziness wins a lot of fights.
I get the fear, but I still think actual touch matters more than people admit.
That was the one hopeful thing, that people still crave physical presence.
And yet we are already teaching kids how to talk less and scroll more.
That part felt bigger than porn to me, honestly.
Because sexual health is just one branch of the bigger problem, which is human connection.
Yeah, and trauma sits right underneath that whole structure.
That was the part that got quiet in the room, because the body really does remember.
Tight pelvic floors, pain, dysfunction, all of that can be tied to old trauma.
Which is why just telling people to relax is such a lazy answer.
It is the medical version of, have you tried not being sad?
Horrible, but true.
I love the point that sexual dysfunction always has a psychological component too.
Because feeling broken in that space is already enough to create more damage.
Exactly. The fear becomes part of the condition.
And then we still do not teach any of this properly in school.
We teach almost nothing useful about bodies, relationships, money, or digital life.
Basically, school prepares you for a world that no longer exists.
And then people are shocked that adults are confused.
The clitoris explanation was also a big one, because so many men are genuinely clueless.
Some of us are educated, just extremely late.
You saying that with confidence is so funny.
But the fact that it is structurally similar to the penis is actually important.
Yeah, because it explains why penetration alone is not enough for so many women.
And it shifts the whole conversation from what is wrong with her to what does her body need.
Exactly, and the data gap there is ridiculous.
Penis gets 50,000 papers, clitoris gets scraps.
Classic humanity, deeply interested in the thing attached to male ego.
That is such a mean but fair line.
Then there is the whole ejaculation frequency and prostate cancer point, which flips the script again.
21 times a month is not a life goal, but it is an interesting signal.
Imagine putting that on a wellness app. People would lose their minds.
Everyone would suddenly become very dedicated to research.
But even there, correlation is not destiny, because healthier people might just do more of everything.
Right, more activity, better relationships, better health, better outcomes.
And then people turn that into a rule instead of a pattern.
The masturbation myths were almost funny until you remember how much guilt they create.
No Nut November is basically shame with a calendar attached.
That is incredible. Shame with a calendar attached.
If someone wants a personal challenge, fine, but making it moral is where it gets messy.
And the post-nut clarity thing is so real for enough people that you cannot just dismiss it.
Though it clearly is not some universal superpower, it is just a brain state shift.
Which makes sense because desire narrows your world until the urge is gone.
Then suddenly the other person is not a fantasy anymore. They are a full human again.
That might be the cleanest explanation of the whole thing.
Okay, that is enough body myth destruction for one episode.
We came in for a casual chat and ended up fixing school curriculum and sex education.
Basically a light Tuesday.
Next episode gets even more into how these topics connect to identity and relationships.
And the stuff people are afraid to admit out loud, which is always the fun part.
We will see you there.
Episode 3 is where it starts getting even more personal.
Welcome back. We're still unpacking the weird myths around sexual health and what actually matters.
And honestly, it gets more interesting when you realize half of this is just health, not scandal.
Right. People keep treating it like a moral test instead of a body function.
The porn shame stuff really shows that gap between behavior and guilt.
Yeah, because the minute something feels hidden, people start spiraling.
And then they think the answer is punishment instead of honest information.
Which is wild, because porn is basically just entertainment with a giant emotional tax attached.
A giant emotional tax is such a brutal way to describe it.
But the real issue is kids seeing it before they can even process what they're seeing.
That part is huge, because their first model of sex can be totally fake.
And then we act surprised when real intimacy feels confusing later.
Exactly, because nobody teaches them the difference between performance and connection.
So the internet becomes the sex ed teacher, which is already a disaster.
The internet as a teacher should require a warning label.
What I found fascinating is that adults can use porn without it being some moral collapse.
It becomes the problem when it turns into the easiest dopamine button.
Yeah, because then it stops being about desire and starts being about coping.
And coping loops are where shame gets its real power.
Shame is such a garbage business partner, honestly.
It never helps, but it always wants a seat at the table.
The phone and headset stuff is where this gets futuristic and slightly terrifying.
Oh, the spatial video thing is honestly insane from a tech perspective.
It feels like that edge where convenience starts competing with real life.
That is the part that worries me, because easy always wins unless people fight for depth.
And people are already bad at resisting easy.
Especially when the easy option gives instant relief and zero rejection.
But I did like that not everything about VR is dystopian.
Yeah, using it for fear and pain therapies is genuinely smart.
That part felt almost hopeful, like technology can help people heal too.
Especially when trauma has made their body feel unsafe.
That came through so strongly in the pelvic floor discussion too.
The body really does remember things the mind tries to bury.
Which is brutal, because then the symptom looks physical and emotional at the same time.
And that's why therapy matters alongside the medical stuff.
We still treat sex like it should be silent and private and therefore magically fixed.
Meanwhile, people are suffering for years because nobody taught them vocabulary.
The clitoris explanation was one of the cleanest things in the whole conversation.
Because it was finally explained like an actual body part instead of a mystery cave.
A mystery cave is an extremely dangerous sentence to say on a podcast.
But you know what I mean? People act like it's unknowable.
And the point that most women need clitoral stimulation is just basic reality.
Which means bad communication is not a small issue, it's the whole game.
Imagine missing the manual and then blaming the machine.
That is basically how a lot of relationships operate.
The orgasm and pelvic floor connection was also way more practical than people realize.
Yeah, I did not expect orgasm to be discussed like a muscle workout.
It is wild how much of this is just anatomy plus timing plus relaxation.
And overdoing Kegels can actually make things worse if the floor is already tight.
That is the kind of detail people really need before they start self-experimenting.
Exactly. Because wellness culture loves oversimplifying things into one magic exercise.
The semen volume stuff was funny because everyone wants a shortcut explanation.
And the real answer is often just hydration and time since last ejaculation.
So the body was never broken, it was just waiting.
Yes, and possibly asking for water like a normal adult.
The phone in the pocket thing is another classic modern anxiety with an actual mechanism.
Heat, not magic radiation doom, was the real point.
Which is almost disappointing because people love a dramatic villain.
True, but a hot laptop on the lap is still a bad idea if you care about fertility.
And the sauna point makes it feel less like panic and more like context.
Right, not every habit is evil, but repeated heat exposure can matter.
The sperm count decline over decades is the part that really lands with me.
A 50% drop over 50 years is not a tiny trend, that's a direction.
And then everyone just shrugs like environmental health is somebody else's problem.
It's probably one of those slow-moving collective issues that nobody can ignore forever.
What I liked is that she didn't pretend it was only one cause.
Yeah, because fertility is messy, and people want one villain and one fix.
The male and female split in fertility also matters more than people admit.
Especially because people still act like fertility is mostly a woman's issue.
Which is such an outdated way to think about it.
And not very useful if the goal is actually to help couples.
The masturbation and testosterone myth was one of my favorites to watch get dismantled.
Because people built a whole personality around one tiny study.
10 men and suddenly everyone is an endocrinologist.
That is the internet in one sentence.
And the larger point is that testosterone is not some sacred treasure you lose by existing.
Right. But abstinence culture loves turning normal biology into a challenge.
Then people suffer through it and call it discipline.
Which is why I liked the warning about people becoming tense and miserable.
No Nut November sounds like a joke until people start acting like failed monks.
Failed monks is maybe the funniest description possible.
But the real point is that shame turns every personal choice into a referendum.
And that is exhausting for something that should mostly be about consent and comfort.
The post-ejaculation clarity thing was also way more nuanced than the meme version.
Yeah, because people use one feeling and build a whole philosophy around it.
Humans love a dramatic narrative with no supporting evidence.
Especially when it feels personally true for them.
I did think the refractory period explanation made evolutionary sense.
It's funny how many of these things are just protection mechanisms.
And then the brain goes quiet after orgasm, which is kind of poetic in a weird way.
Or terrifying, depending on how attached you were to the moment.
Fair, that is the most honest answer so far.
The biggest takeaway for me is still that sexual symptoms can signal broader health issues.
Like ED being a possible early warning sign for cardiovascular problems.
Exactly. So embarrassment can literally delay care when it matters.
That's the part that should scare people a little, in a useful way.
And maybe make them actually talk to a doctor instead of a group chat.
Group chat is great for vibes, terrible for diagnosis.
Extremely terrible, but very confident.
So yeah, this whole episode was basically about replacing shame with mechanics.
And replacing myths with actual body literacy, which we desperately need.
I love that because it sounds simple, but it changes everything.
It really does, especially for people who've been scared for years.
All right, we're going to leave it there before we turn this into a medical textbook.
Too late. We were 1 foot in the textbook already.
Fair, but this was the fun kind of learning which counts.
Back next time, we get even more personal about identity and relationships.
And the stuff people usually only admit after 2 drinks and a long pause.
Episode 3 is where it starts getting really honest.
Welcome back. We're in the myths, the panic, and the stuff nobody teaches you.
This is the episode where everyone realizes their internet wisdom was trash.
The internet really handed us a lot of confident nonsense.
And the scary part is people build shame around it for years.
The sperm count thing hit me hard because 50% down is wild.
Yeah, the direction matters more than the exact number, and it is concerning.
If that keeps sliding, the whole conversation stops being cute fast.
Exactly, because then it becomes environment, health, and policy all at once.
I keep thinking, is this just fertility anxiety or is it real decline?
It sounds like both because age matters, but environment probably does too.
So the phone in the pocket panic is not completely crazy, just incomplete.
That is such a polite way to say your girlfriend is not totally wrong.
She was not being random, she was being medically annoying.
The temperature piece is the real thing, not some magical Bluetooth baby zapper.
Thank God, because the conspiracy version was getting expensive.
Right. The actual advice is much less cinematic. Keep heat off the testicles.
Saunas, hot tubs, laptop on lap, all the cozy little saboteurs.
Especially if someone is actively trying for a baby.
And then people act shocked when no one ever told them that in school.
School teaches almost nothing useful about bodies, honestly.
The masturbation and testosterone myth was another one I just swallowed whole.
Because it sounds scientific when people say it with a serious face.
Exactly. Like 10 guys in a lab somehow became gospel.
And the actual evidence just does not support that cleanly.
So abstaining for a month is not secretly turning you into a superhero.
Disappointing, I know. The semen retention Avengers are not coming.
That should be a terrible Marvel movie.
What is more interesting is how people turn it into identity.
Yeah, like if you fail a challenge, suddenly you feel morally weak.
And that guilt is often doing more damage than the behavior itself.
The No Nut November thing feels like a gym bro rite of passage.
It really does, except with more shame and more lying.
And probably more nocturnal emissions ruining the leaderboard.
The fact that wet dreams are that common should calm people down.
Wait, 86% of men having had one is actually huge.
It is, and it shows that the body handles things whether you micromanage it or not.
I also liked the point that orgasm itself can help pelvic floor strength.
That was fascinating because it reframes orgasm as function, not just pleasure.
So the body is out here doing involuntary workouts without asking us.
Honestly, the body is very efficient when it is not being dramatic.
But the caveat matters, because too much clenching can backfire.
Exactly, especially when people treat Kegels like a universal fix.
People always want one exercise to solve everything.
And pelvic floor issues are usually the opposite of simple.
The porn part was where the conversation got even messier.
Because now you are mixing pleasure, shame, habit, and addiction language.
And most people are using the word addiction way too casually.
Right, because frequency alone is not the same as loss of control.
But the kid seeing porn early is the part that feels genuinely alarming.
That was the biggest issue to me too, because the brain is not ready for it.
8 to 10 is not even close to enough time to understand what they're seeing.
And then they think that is what sex is supposed to look like.
That is such a brutal mismatch between fantasy and reality.
Which is why the shame loop gets so sticky for adults too.
Shame makes people hide it, and hiding makes the habit harder to talk about.
And then they never ask for help until it has already become isolating.
The Vision Pro tangent was honestly where my brain went loud.
Because you immediately saw the future in the most chaotic direction.
Tell me that headset does not scream future pornography machine.
It does raise that concern, even if I do not love the conclusion.
Because if the experience gets close enough, convenience wins a lot of the time.
That is the scary part, yes, especially with young people already glued to screens.
We already have a whole generation losing practice at being in the room.
And yet the body still wants touch, surprise, and another human being.
That made the VR therapy example way more interesting to me.
That was actually the hopeful counterweight, because the same tool can heal.
Using VR for fear of penetration felt like a huge shift in treatment.
It is preliminary, but it is a smart use of technology instead of a stupid one.
That should be the slogan for half of modern tech.
Pretty much, yes.
Trauma came up in a way that felt very real, not theoretical.
Because the body remembers even when the mind tries to move on.
That line lands hard, especially with pelvic floor tension.
And it explains why sexual dysfunction is never just physical or just mental.
It is both, and pretending otherwise makes people feel broken.
Which is why therapy should be normal, not some last desperate step.
The clitoris section was probably the most criminally undertaught part.
Criminally undertaught is generous. Most people know almost nothing.
The fact that it is basically the same developmental structure as the penis is wild.
And that it is so central to orgasm for most women changes everything.
It makes penetrative sex being treated as the main event look absurd.
Exactly, because a lot of people are chasing the wrong map entirely.
And then communication becomes the real skill, not some magic technique.
Right, asking, noticing, adjusting, and not making it weird.
Which is somehow harder than the physical part for most people.
That is the episode, honestly. Your body is not bizarre, just misunderstood.
And half the problems start when shame gets louder than information.
Exactly. And that is why these conversations matter so much.
All right, we're done pretending this was not one giant unlearning session.
We absolutely unlearned a lot, and I feel better for it.
Back next time we get into identity, relationships, and the messy human stuff.
Episode 3 is where the conversation gets even more personal.